Welcome to another episode of the Bhandwagon podcast. And today is one of my, what I would say is somebody that I've looked from afar from a very long time. I'll just go through a little bit of his repertoire and just to kind of showcase the importance of individuals like this. And one of the reasons why I was doing this podcast is to kind of use examples like my guest in terms of like seeing what people can do and the potential that they can reach. So he's a deputy lieutenant of the West Midlands, or whatever kind of paraphrase you want to use for that, but he should be just the main man. He was the president of the Black Country Chamber of Commerce. He is CEO of the Nachural Group, so that does the Nachural Awards, the signature awards around, especially around business. And he's also part of one of the main bands of the UK Bhangra legacy, Achanak. My guest today is Mr. Ninder Johal. How are you?
Listen, good evening, and thank you for the invite, and thank you. I look forward to speaking to you.
Yeah, no, it's great. It's a great day at this moment in time because Liverpool just lost the league, so that was good. That's good.
Oh, okay. So I take it you're a Man United fan then?
That's right. Yeah. So we've had very little to celebrate at all this year,
and today's result wasn't great either.
Oh no. Who cares about today's result, really? You know what I mean? It's just about making sure that we defend that treble. It's poor, and it just shows the standards of how bad things are.
Anyway, I'm sure there's going to be a bright future there somewhere.
Well, it's got to be. Well, you know around business and industry, what kind of recommendations would you give, especially if this was a business kind of transaction? What kind of leader would you be bringing in?
Well, I think you've already determined who that leader is. He was apparently sitting in the big seat today watching. Yeah. And obviously didn't galvanize the reaction they thought, because they thought when you have a new leader in place, everybody wants to please the new leader to say, include me in your team. So didn't quite have that. But let's see what your new manager does and what a new leader does. And as in any business or any organization, whether it's a Gurdwara or a mosque or a temple, an organization is run by people, and people determine the success or failure of whichever organization you look for, whether it's in business or not business.
Yeah, I mean, it you know, when you look at things and you look at something that was successful, especially if somebody leaves kind of an organization, especially if it's been really well, I always believe, and I could be wrong here, and I want to know your opinion on it, is that the true legacy to see that if that organization, that business works, is if you took the main person out and it still functions. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, I think in business terms, we call it having the appropriate systems and processes in place so that the business isn't determined by the existence of one or two individuals. A business should be self-sustaining and should be able to continue without them. And if they don't, then it's not really a business. It's not really an organization. It's just someone's vehicle to do something. So I think for a business to truly survive, at its earliest opportunity, needs to build that system and those processes in place so that people can come in and out and the organization can still survive. So that's the difference between a proper business and an organization run by individuals for their own benefit.
So I'd like to go kind of back. What was the young Ninder Johal like? If you can explain what the environment was, because if I'm guessing right, you've got a very strong affiliation with Smethwick and around that area. Is that where home
was? Yeah, I was born in Birmingham, Edgbaston, and I grew up around the Smethwick area, and I think like most second generation, so my parents were the first generation, came in the 60s. I think the second generation were taught to get an education, because the first generation that came here ended up doing the physical work in the foundries, and clearly they didn't want their children to follow the same suit. So I think typically people of my generation were told from a very early age, get yourself an education, and I think that's the route I took. So my first degree was in finance in Leeds, finance and accountancy. And then I did an MBA at Aston. So always, we were encouraged to go on an academic route to make sure that we didn't end up doing what our parents did. So that was the early stage. And of course, as growing up in Smethwick, I went to the local temple, the Smethwick Gurdwara, and that's when I started to see Kirtan, and I'd start playing the tabla within the Kirtan. And that's where the music sort of affiliation grew, really, is through going to the local Gurdwara.
And I could be wrong here. Just 2 points what you just said. One is when you were getting a degree actually meant a lot. Because obviously, if you look at business nowadays, it's a very saturated market, and it's almost role reversal now. If you're hands-on and you're able to do the hard labor work, they're getting the money that used to be affiliated with kind of degree level and stuff. And then so, like, you know, kudos there. And I think you know, my home kind of family and my mum's side especially, you know, education was really kind of driven there, and they were getting degrees when it meant something. Like, I mean, I did a politics degree. I mean, I could argue, I'm saying I'll use it. But anyway, the second part is around the Kirtan at the Gorda, and the amount of people who did Kirtan who've become successful in Punjabi folk music at that time. The Pachangi groups were around it, and around that what was that like for you in terms of your interest of music, and then could you see the shoots of this whole industry coming from there?
Okay, so a couple of things. I'll take your first point on about the education. I think what employers are now looking for is not a piece of paper which says I've got a degree. They're looking for someone who's got a particular skill set. And by that, I mean the ability to communicate, the ability to work in teams, the ability to think outside the box, to be creative. And those are not necessarily the things you would pick up from a degree. I think the Labour government of Blair thought we need to raise the level of education in the country, and they thought the route was through a degree. So they made entry to do a degree much easier. They expanded the number of universities that could offer degrees, and I think people thought practical skills weren't as important as academic skills. And I think you're absolutely right. Where we find ourselves now is that actually it's the ability to think out the box, this ability to be personally creative, it's the ability to do things and get things done and execute things that really matter now. But interestingly, in this sort of very competitive marketplace for skills, people still do look for a degree. And if you haven't got one, then you need to have something in its place that looks as good on paper, if not better. So I think, unfortunately, because everybody's got one, you'll get noticed if you don't have one. That will sort of place you at a disadvantage, but you'll need to be able to show that actually the skill set you've got is better than that of somebody with a degree. So it's an interesting place. Certainly, if somebody said to me, I had two candidates, one had a degree and one candidate didn't, but had lots and lots of experience, I must concede and admit this is somebody who's got 2 degrees. I would be tempted towards the non-degree person, because I thought, or I think, with their experience, they could get cracking from day one. So I think the antidote to that really is that the people who teach the degrees need to understand the real world is different and need to change the curriculum so that we do have a level of practical skills and all the skills you referred to that people can then go into the marketplace and get themselves jobs. So I was interviewing Alfie Best, who's a billionaire, he was in the Sunday Times rich list, and he spoke at our Leicester event. But before the Leicester event, I did a podcast with him, because we have our own podcast called the Business Influencer Podcast.
Okay, we'll put a link onto that for everybody else. So if anyone listening from here, make sure you subscribe, follow, share the podcast.
Now, here's an interesting chap who left school at 12, but his early memories was that his father took him out every morning to do the driveway. He's a gypsy, by the way, to do the driveway. He made a very interesting comment. He said, you have 2 types of people. He said, you either have the really streetwise people, these are without the degrees, or you have the highly educated people. He said, what you actually want is a combination of both. He said, if you can get the education and the business acumen, in other words, the streetwise, if you could put those 2 together, you have a fantastic individual that could achieve many things in life. And it's interesting, our next speaker at the Wolverhampton Awards is also a gypsy, and he had no education at all. I mean, nil. And he's a multimillionaire running a number of businesses. And it'd be interesting when I ask him, did the lack of education hold you back? So I think we do need education. I just think the curriculum, the things being taught at universities and schools, need to change and reflect today's real world, which is, yeah, degrees great, education great, but you need that other set of skills. So those are my views really on.
No, I'm going to kind of echo a little bit of that, because it's almost like in one aspect, I try and drill it to my kids, like, you're going to have to get your hands dirty, and you're going to have not just one source of income, you're going to have probably 2 or 3 passive income, all of these kind of things in order to do that. And I think if you do get your hands dirty regardless, that is actually a good philosophy in order to make sure that you actually doing and becoming an activist and doing it. Just on the other point, I've got a friend of mine. I was part of the, let's say, the Blair project. Well, not the Witch project, but Blair project, right?
Yeah.
So I remember seeing one of my friends. He went to, his dad was a very successful business owner, owned a couple of shops. And then he came out, tried his hand to try and be a kind of a financial advisor, but then actually gave up that side of work and went back in, and with his degree knowledge started expanding, building business together. And that was he's the best sort of example in terms of, he's a Smedic lad as well, and he was the best example of saying how using the grit and the hands-on work, but using the business brain and the academic knowledge, and bringing that combination together, and then setting up his own businesses. And you're going for, like, Dylan Chima, for example, who's that boxer. His family own a number of businesses in the shop. He's got a degree behind him, boxing as well at the same time, balancing all that. I think, strategically, we're very equipped to do that. But I will say, I think especially over the last couple of years, with everyone staying at home and trying to get those final pieces of building work in the house done, the market is just absolutely driven incredibly now. And I feel it has shifted a little bit down to say, like, vocational qualifications are just as important as degree, in my opinion, now.
I think those kind of skills are now in short supply, and I think we need to be able to train, teach, educate the next generation that they need to be all-rounded skill set, an all-balanced skill set, and I think if they have that skill set that's all rounded and balanced, I think they'll be better as individuals, and I think their contribution to society will reflect that. Your second comment around the music industry and Smedic Gurdwara and Smedic generally, when I went to the Gurdwara, I had no idea that we had a flourishing or a potential music industry in front of us. If I recall, so when I was a child, there was no such thing as the Bhangra industry. What we had potentially was occasionally you'd go to a wedding and you might find A.S. Gong with a Tolki player or a tabla player, and maybe a mandolin or a harmonium, and that was it, really. That was sort of your early elements of entertainment. And I think my first recollection of entertainment was when I went to university and I saw Chirag Bachchan come to an event, and then 2 days later, I went to Aston University. So I was a student then, and I saw a LARP play, and that's when I thought, "Wow, this is electrifying what they're doing here." Because that was more Punjabi, Chirag Bachchan more Hindi, and I actually saw a band playing Bhangra music, Punjabi music, but a fusion and a hybrid, and that's what really sparked my interest. And I thought, "Wow, wouldn't it be great to be in a band like that?" Performing that level of music. So at the Gurdwara, I was 10, 12, 13, 14. There's no such thing as the Bhangra industry. And when it did mushroom, it exploded. And I think most people did see an explosion. It all happened within 2-3 years. It did explode. So there was no legacy or something that had been going on for generations that was built on. It really did all happen very, very quickly and very suddenly. And it did really, in all sense of the word, it did explode very quickly.
How did you balance then? Because you clearly got academia behind you, and you've got this other side of your natural talent of becoming with the double R playing as well. When did you start thinking, right, there's potentially a bit of career apart from this, or how did you get started in formulating that pathway?
Okay, so once I'd done my MBA, I secured myself a role in Liverpool. Did a couple of years as a management trainee, um, and then I got a job locally, Solihull, as a management consultant, and that meant I was one of a team of three. We would go all across the country looking at business units, those businesses, would look at their books, would find out if they were losing money, why they were losing money, what we had to do to correct that. And it was at that point that I was with the Jonic, and we did actually explode very suddenly with Lucknow, which was a huge hit. That's when the problem began. You talk about balance, because we'd be regularly doing shows during the week, 2 or 3 nights. Would be finishing about 2, and because I could be anywhere in the country with my job, I'd have to then drive to wherever that place was. And probably I'd get to that place around 6, and I'd be expected to be at work for 8. And so it was, while they dovetailed nicely, in other words, daytime job, evening was the gigs, but it meant I was hardly sleeping, if that made sense. And so it was becoming difficult to do both. So the side hustle, which was the music, was interfering with the day, because I wouldn't say disorientated, but I was really tired. And of course, by this stage, I was enjoying the music really, really. I thought, this is great. Wouldn't it be great to go full time with this? But I knew just being in the band wouldn't be sustainable. And that's when the idea of setting up a record company came up. So that's when I thought, if I'm going to scale, then not only Jonic, but I need a few other artists. So that's when I set up Nachural Records whilst working. And that's when I hadn't signed anyone actually other than a Jonic, and it's a big risk. And I just said to my employer, I'm finished. And he said, so where are you going? I said, I'm setting my own record company up. And of course, it wasn't very well taken at home, not very well received at all.
I was just gonna say that, because this is again your innovation comes at a risk.
Yeah, and of course my parents quite rightly said, you got 2 degrees, a finance degree, you got an MBA, a master's. What the hell are you doing running a cassette business? Because that was their, I've said this often, the trotter, the yellow van, you open the back boot and all these cassettes. But no boy. And that's what they thought I was getting myself into. And because entertainment isn't exactly top of the prestige occupations when we think about Asian culture and Punjabi culture, it was a shock to them. And it was quite difficult to explain, not only to my parents, but my relatives. And what do you do? I run a record company. What's one of them? Oh, music. Anyway, so that was a
conversation killer, really.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think my father struggled to explain at weddings when they said, well, so what does your son do? I think he struggled to explain. And I think the best he could come out with was he plays the tabla. I think, they couldn't equate playing tabla full time to having 2 degrees. But anyway, that was, like you said, a conversation killer.
Yeah, I mean, Johnny Kelsey said, I interviewed him not too long ago, and he was talking about his journey going up, and he was one at the front of innovation, especially taking it out into the Western world, like what you did with Jonic, like playing in countries, which is just unbelievable. And I don't think you guys get enough credit for that, because when you look back on it and you see, even just following your son's Instagram, where he's performed, you just think, wow, this is just in the period of time where social media has been available. But these guys were doing it 20 years earlier or 30 years earlier in some ways. And
it was but it was I mean, we'll talk about the Jonic thing in Europe, but I think because it was still in its embryonic stage, the whole industry, nobody could quite understand because there's no precedent. We hadn't done it before, and people didn't know what it meant. And they saw weddings and they saw bands at weddings, and that was their whole limit of, well, is that what they do? And that's all they saw. Of course, but with the record company, it was a much wider remit. we were signing artists, then getting them into the studio, recording them in the studio, then preparing all the promotion and the advertising and the marketing and the distribution, not just in this country, but we were selling in Canada, in America, we were selling in Singapore, then we even started exporting to Japan. So it became a fully fledged business, managing creative talent and making sure we could then promote it and sell it around the world.
How was it, obviously you've got the skills now. How was it then when you were looking at what a Ninder Johal was at the time, where he's signing, peak talent? Like some of the talent that you had was like Punjabi MC underneath you and a few others, but he's a really good case to kind of highlight where his music even transcended exactly the same in terms of what you were saying all around the world. How difficult was it then to kind of manage talent and trying to sell them the idea of your innovation and your vision forward?
Okay, so a couple of things. So people said, well, why did you set up the label? And I tell you, I had, it's difficult because I tried to explain to people that having played with the Janak, and we did occasional shows where there was a good audience, and they loved it. And so my dream then was to take Bhangra music into the charts. That was the dream. And to do that, the vehicle was going to be the Natural Records. And a Janak was another conduit into that market. So that was the sort of the dream. But of course, most people will tell you Bhangra music was only consumed by Punjabis. It was only consumed by Punjabis from the age of about 14 to probably about 30, 35. That was the sort of, it was consumed of people of that generation, of that age, mostly university and colleges. And if somebody had said, well, we think this could cross into the charts, I think everybody would have been, everybody used to fall about laughing. And most people thought I'd really ought to be placed in a straitjacket. Because how can Bhangra music with a foreign vocal, foreign melody, foreign instrumentation, how can that ever get into the charts? So that was the dream I had. And of course, we set about signing artists. And was it difficult? No, it wasn't actually, because right from the very outset, I was fortunate that when I launched the label, I'd already made a success, or I was associated with success of Janak. And because we'd come into the market quite strong and there was a lot of marketing behind it, then when I said I've set up a label, it wasn't an unknown entity, if that makes sense.
Yeah,
they associate success with success.
But you're also professional, like the crime that isn't done now, where you're trying to professionalize a market that is constantly fighting against that professionalism. People not getting credited for lyricists or etc. And you're coming there trying to do this. And you had a good go at it as well to start off with.
Yeah, well, so a couple of things we did straight away. One was we looked at the marketing and the image of the music. So we started to invest a lot in the cover design. I also took on risk by taking on artists who are unknown. So there's no baggage. And with unknown artists, you can mold them much, much easier because they're new to it. And you say, look, can we get you to perform like this? Can we get you to do this? And by the way, we think the cover design will look better this way. We were also, I think, one of the very first record companies to wrap our product, put a shrinking around it. Now that meant it was more expensive for us to do, but I knew that when it went into the marketplace, anybody who bought one knew that it was nice and it was high quality. So we placed a lot of emphasis on that. Very early on, I knew that we had to communicate to the audience. So we innovated an idea of a newsletter that would go inside the cassette. So when you open the cassette or the CD, a newsletter would pop out and it would tell you what the next albums were. I also knew there was a credibility problem with Bhangra music because nobody actually knew when an album would ever come out. But we started giving specific dates and we would hit those dates. So people started to trust the brand because they said, well, not only is it all young talent, not only is it all modern, not only is it well packaged, but actually it's delivered on the date they said it would be delivered. So we started to build up a credibility in an industry that was not seen as credible. And that all of those things really came, and we talked about education a few minutes ago. that all came from having an MBA, having a master's, and understanding consumer behavior, understanding packaging, understanding promotion, and understanding how we would call the 4 Ps all sit together: product, place, promotion. What's the fourth one now? Product, place, promotion, and price.
Yeah.
And of course, what we did with the price later on when the Punjabi MC thing came out and a few others, we took the pricing to match the mainstream. And the message we were giving was we should be as proud of our music as we should be if they were in the charts. So that was the sort of the quality side. And that's how we took the quality up in terms of perceptions, because Bhangra music was typically sold at £2, £3, which is fine, but you could never get over the credibility. People said, "Oh, it's £2 throwaway music." And by pricing it, and I remember how people reacted when I took it to the mainstream. Why is it so expensive? I said, it's a quality product. So those are little initiatives and little innovations that I brought in to sort of raise the bar and for people to be proud of the music that not only do they produce, but the music they then bought and the music they then consumed. And that's why, through those little techniques, the brand Nachural flew quite quickly by doing simple stuff well.
I know, but you cost me a fortune because I think I bought Grassroots about 5 times on CD as well. So it was good from there. Just a little bit on PMC, to be honest. Into arguably with the Monday on the Bachke and his portfolio, what he did in that time, and he was arguably one of the best producers that the UK has ever produced. I mean, you're fortunate to work with a character like that. How was he as a young person when he was experimenting? Because you might not be familiar with that kind of sound or anything. The risk that he took of fusing those genres together.
Yeah, I still remember when he first came, really talented, and we signed him on. And I think he came to us because, again, the brand, the Nachural brand, had grown. And when I heard his sound, it was fresh. It really was fresh. And of course, he was fusing Western and Asian beats together really, really well. So I could see that, and obviously we released a few albums, and then we came to Legalized, and Legalized obviously did very well in the Asian markets, and then Punjabi MC went to sign to another label, which was fine, and then we continued. Remember, I had this dream, so we continued to keep selling Legalized in terms of a concept. And then, of course, I remember still going into Europe. I was going 3 or 4 times. So I remember nobody comes knocking on your door. You have to go to them.
Yeah.
And I was armed with CDs, including Legalized, and I was trying to persuade any record company in Europe to take it on. And nobody would take it on. Not just Punjabi MC, but all the rest of it. They wouldn't take it on. And this went on for 12 years. So I was going every year. And I was the only one going, by the way. Nobody else was going for the Bhangra industry because they couldn't see the point behind it, because they, I think, like everybody else, thought, well, the only people who want to buy it is Punjabis. And then, of course, I eventually managed to convince a little label in Italy. I said, I think you'll enjoy this music. Let me play it to you. They said, don't really understand it. We won't give you any money. We'll give you royalties, and we'll see where it takes us. And then they did something with it, not much. And then 6 months later, I met a guy from Turkey who said, yeah, I got to know him quite well. He said, I'll take it and we'll see where we go with it. Now, this is where the lucky break came, was the Mundia Dabachke track started to cause a storm in the nightclubs in Istanbul. So that's where it started. And the lucky bit that fell for me was the DJs from Turkey, Istanbul, were heavily connected to Germany. So there's a big Turkish population in Germany.
Yeah.
So they took the record to Germany and started to play in the clubs there. And I remember one sunny day I was walking along and my phone rang, and a German came on board and said, we've heard this tune, we don't understand it, don't understand the lyrics, don't understand the melody, but everybody in the clubs love it. What is it? And can we have it for the world? And I said, well, you can't have it for the world, but we can talk about Europe. But good to hear. When I put the phone down, I thought, wow, it's taken 12 years, but actually it's starting to do something. Then we signed the deal with the Germans. Then Sony came to me because I'd heard there was something happening. Sony in the UK said, would like to sign it. I said, okay, let's sign it for the UK and Ireland. By this stage, we got it on the Radio 1 playlist. First time ever, Radio 1 playlist. And it started to get played. I was now in Oxford Circus going to see Sony. And on my way back, I was walking along and I heard the track. I turned around, half expected it to be in a Punjabi's car. But actually it was white, 5 young kids dancing to the tune. I then knew we were onto something. Then it started to get played regularly in the nightclubs. And then remember I went when I met all these people, I'd be traveling out. So I was traveling out to France again. And just before I left, I said to Sony, how is it looking? They said, we think we might have a top 10 here, which was incredible. And I said, let's see what happens. Got to France, and the charts are normally on a Sunday.
Yeah.
About 1 o'clock. And they said, here are the charts. Number 10, I can't remember. Number 9, can't remember. 8, 7, 6. And I thought, oh, we've missed the boat. And then it said, number 5, straight in, Monday at the Punjabi MC. Oh, wow. Do you remember the dream? Suddenly, we were number 5 in the UK charts. By this stage, we got into Germany at number 2. And now it was starting to rock and roll. Then we got a call from America. They're saying, we want it for America. And we did the deal. And then we got a call saying Jay-Z wants to be on the record. I said, wow. Did the deal with Jay-Z, and we went number 7.
Did you get to, you just name dropped Jay-Z there, but like, do you speak to him and say, why do you get done?
No, I'll tell you a funny story. So we had the conference call. So there's me, my lawyer from the UK. We had the American label plus their lawyer in New York. And then the third party was Jay-Z's manager, I think. Manager or somebody, I can't remember. 3-way. And then what was interesting was we did the deal, and then Jay-Z sent his first rap, which I must concede wasn't what we expected. We sent it back. You know, you don't normally do that to Jay-Z, but we sent it back. We said, can we have another bash? Then he did another one. It was okay, but nobody says to Jay-Z, do it again twice. So we took it, and it worked out well. And so we had 9 number 1s. We knocked off Ronan Keating. He was number 1 in Italy. It became the biggest ringtone tune in Japan. We sold in every territory. So I think of every country except China. So we went through Sony in Australia, New Zealand. We went through Sony in in India, where it was a huge tune. And that's the first time the Indians bought a Bhangra track. And of course, then that changed everything in the way India started to do production, was based on the success of that track. And then we did Warners throughout Europe and South Africa. I can't remember, South Africa. Then we went through an independent in America and Canada. We sold it to Iceland. We went South America. You name it, right across Russia we did. Everywhere we did, we sold. And it became one of the hottest tracks in the dance charts in that year. And of course, then it was licensed to EastEnders, it was licensed to some Bollywood movies, Hollywood movies, you name it, it became the track. And I suppose it created for the first time, and a lot of Punjabis tell me, is when they walk into a nightclub in Europe and the DJ spots them, that's the track they play.
Yeah. It is. I remember the first time I kind of spotted it and picked it up, and I don't know whereabouts in the store timeline that it was, but I kind of I've kind of got an idea for what you said. Was Westwood started playing it on Radio One, and when he was performing, especially at Leicester, it was all happening in there, and he used to he used to play that and Sauna,
Yeah.
and then but when you hear the Tumbi straight away, you just know, I mean, and it is an anthem that picks it up. And then was there the temptation then of trying to grab PMC back and say, hang on, we got a chance here now, we've got, it's established, there's other things we can do?
I think we were in different places then.
Yeah.
And he was doing his own thing and doing it really well. And what happened to me was I'd done what I'd set out to do, which was,
you completed it.
Yeah. That sort of big dream. And of course, then what was also happening was the world was changing rapidly. We were now entering a digital revolution.
Yeah.
And then of course I said to myself, what are the chances of getting 2, 3, 4, 5 top 5 hits? And maybe this is actually where I've done what I wanted to do. And now maybe it was a 12 hard years of trying to get to it. And maybe now I want to be looking at something else. And then the digital revolution came and the returns weren't looking as great as what they could be. So now we're entering, particularly for the first 4 or 5 years, where people didn't want to pay for digitals at all. I know people are used to it now, but they wouldn't pay for digitals. And we were still in a niche market, and I didn't think the numbers would stack. So we went streaming, but then I moved into events. Now somebody said, well, why events? Because through music, I learned about branding, I learned about marketing, I learned about creative talent. And I thought if I could take entertainment, if I could take that into the corporate market, maybe we could do something. And that's when the idea of setting up our own awards and networking events.
Just before you go into that one, I just want, I've had the ADH on here, and he said he spoke highly of you and that. And I remember listening to a Man's Music interview ages ago when he first moved into Canada, and what he said about you was unbelievable in terms of like, you took a gamble on him, you helped him. He was literally sleeping on the floor at that time, and you were like, trying to get you were monetizing him and giving him an income, and that, which ultimately provided in some ways of the foundation of the modern day, what Man's has done as well. So the amount of hidden stories behind there, is there anything that, any kudos that you should get that people just don't necessarily know?
No, really. I mean, that is for other people to say, to be
honest.
Yeah,
no, I get that. It's just that these interviews are very rare to get, you see. So sometimes when you're asking sometimes, or you don't even get a response back from artists or stuff like that, for me to try and what I'm trying to do is interview people who are interest for me, and especially to get the applause and the gratification in terms of saying, like, these are the people who have done things, and their stories may never come to air again. So that's why I kind of prod a little bit more just on this bit, because you never know if ever you get an opportunity to say it.
Yeah, I think I'm always of the opinion. I mean, at the time, just like now, you just knuckle down and do what you think is right. You try and do the best you can do. You can't keep everyone happy. You try and keep as many people happy as you can. And hopefully those that have benefited from you, whoever they are, will hopefully tell other people. And that's how businesses and brands grow, because you have advocates and ambassadors. And my journey wasn't anything extraordinary, other than probably persistence and resilience. And I think, trying to sell Bhangra music to an audience who couldn't understand what they were listening to was virtually nigh impossible, really. And the fact that we managed then to get it globally charted, selling, I think, around 11 million copies, digital and physical and everything. And the fact that it came from the West Midlands, and it came from British Asians, British Indians, and it conquered globally and sat amongst all the other big sort of acts. I think that's something to be proud of. And I hope in my lifetime I see it replicated, because I think once you break through the glass ceiling once, you've set the path for others to follow. And so really,
we've seen a little bit of that with AP Dylan, because like you've hit, summarize it what you just said. I mean, you hit the hardest metric. You achieved the hardest metric. So you know, therefore, though, that it's been done.
I think what was different with the Monday at the Bachke track, it was globally, it went across everybody.
Yeah.
It wasn't just
That's fair.
Punjabi thing or an Indian thing. It went everywhere. Every nightclub, every country, whether it's Portugal, whether it was Greece. I think AP Dillon hasn't made that transition yet.
Not yet. Not yet.
Yeah, he's largely a Punjabi Asian following. But you won't find him in all the nightclubs everywhere else. And I think the reason behind that is the Monday at the Bachke track was fresh. He was innovative. To you and me, we think, well, hold on, we've heard the Tumbi millions of times. We've heard the Tol millions of times. But actually, everybody who doesn't look like you and me, who doesn't come from a Punjabi background, for them, it was fresh and raw and new. And how did I know that? Because with Achanak, we'd been playing that kind of material. And we knew that once people heard it, they were hooked. And I suppose that comes from the fact that I, and people like you, we love our music. And I think, Ricky, the other thing I would say to you definitely is, as we were growing up and when Bhangra music really hit the scene, I did an interview for a documentary recently around Bhangra music. And I think what it also did, it had wider societal implications for society. People said, well, what do you mean by that? And I said, well, suddenly people could go to a nightclub. This is before we went global, but people could go to a nightclub where they felt safe because everybody in that nightclub looked like them.
Yeah.
But of their age, it became quite trendy for ladies to wear traditional dress. They didn't have to get, and everybody felt safe. And probably more than anything else, there was a music that they could say, this is ours, as opposed to listening to Western music or Wham or whoever it was, which is somebody else's music. This was our music. And of course, when we were on stage, we knew it was our music because we were performing it. And I think for the first time, it allowed people to be proud of their culture, proud of their heritage. And I think that has continued since. We've still got a Bhangra industry, not the same format, but we still listen to Punjabi Gane. AP Dillon has taken in a different direction. Mr. Muswalia did it brilliantly in Canada. He took it in a different, but the fundamentals are still there. And I think, I think there was a huge societal shift during the Bhangra explosion. I don't think it was just musical. I think it was across society.
But
and I think we still see the legacy of those days.
Yeah, and the evidence is in terms of what you took that formula to go into the events business then, because there might not be any kind of peers in that way in terms of like you're seeing events. I remember when I went to visit yourself really at that time many years ago. I came to your office and you were experimenting in sound, and I was like, this guy he's got everything. He's the speakers doing audio at events and stuff, and I was doing my drugs conference at the time. And I was like going, I was very scared. You're gambling a lot of money at that time. It's out of your own pocket. You were hoping for sponsors to come in. And I was like, this guy, he's not scared. I can see, and that was the advice. That was the advice that he said to me at that time, which was like, don't be scared. If you believe in exactly what you're going to do, what you believe in will come true. And I just stuck into that way. It's a completely different industry from what you do.
That's right.
I can see how you took the fundamentals of, when you explain a story like this of your record label to go into the events industry. How was it like a hand to glove or duck to water in terms of when you went into that industry?
I think what was interesting was, and then I understood it later, was so when I got into what we call then the events industry, people said, you need to go and network with people. And I thought, well, what does networking, what does that even mean? Because remember, during the music, and so when I was pushing the label in this country and selling abroad, so this is before the explosion in the mainstream, what you can remember is that I was selling to Punjabis only. whether they were in America, Singapore, Malaysia, or Canada. And my only interaction with anybody other than Punjabi or Asian was the VAT man and the tax man.
And they could have been arrested on anyway.
That might have been, yeah. And other than then, I was fully in our community, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And suddenly we were now flipping it. We were now saying, well, actually, you're now going to have to market, sell your products to non-Asian. And that was quite a flip. So suddenly you're on a new learning curve. And that new learning curve meant that I had to develop networking skills, personal skills, and suddenly have to think much broader and outside the box, because I'm now meeting people I've never met before. I have no affinity with them. Whereas prior to that, I was selling music, I understood the music. I know the people were buying music. They looked like me, they spoke like me, they dressed like me.
Yeah.
But now it was quite the reverse. So I did have to learn that skill. But now, having learned the skill to network, the events I was putting on actually had a large network element to it, because I knew that's what you needed to do to progress your business. But in the first few years, do you know something? I didn't fear it, and I'll tell you why. Because if I've done the impossible, which is sell Bhangra music, then come on. If you can do that, then surely
Selling a ticket to businessmen. Yeah.
nothing can be as hard as that. And I suppose, and of course, I think the other thing in life, this is generally in life, I think the more success you have, the more confident you become. The more confident you become, the more you tend to attract confident people. The more confident people you attract, the more successful people you attract. And then you're then seen, rightly or wrongly, as successful, and the more opportunities open for you. So I think all of these things are quite linked. And I would say to people, it's not the easiest thing to do, but the more confident you are, without being arrogant, but the more confident you are of what you're doing, the more likelihood there is of opportunities opening. This is in or out of business, whichever.
Yeah.
And the more opportunities will be presented to you, and the more you will attract, not the word, the more you will attract like-minded people. If you spend all your day being negative, downtrodden, looking at everything as not being possible, always thinking there's an obstacle, always thinking this isn't going to happen, then don't be surprised when they don't. Yeah. Then don't be surprised when the people that hang out with you are of a similar disposition. And unfortunately, they will also drag you down, which will make you even worse. If you flip it the other way, if you're confident, you're resilient, and you're confident of what you're doing is going to work, you'll be amazed the amount of people that one will want to help you, and you'll be amazed by the amount of positive people that will come to you and that will push you on your way. It really is down to mindset. You need that really positive mindset. And listen, you are going to have dark days. You are going to have dark moments, but that's life. But that's what will make you stronger the next time an opportunity or a problem hits you.
Yeah, I mean, it was amazing. I remember when, like, as I said, all the lessons, what you said, and then seeing you on mainstream media quite often. I always used to tweet you. If anyone goes back to my tweets, it's always, Sir Ninder Johal was on TV. You know what I mean? And it used to be. But to get that kind of level of normality to come in, especially from a person like yourself, culturally going in there and becoming president of the Black Country kind of Chamber of Commerce, what is the true significance of hitting a milestone like that?
I think again, I didn't see it as a milestone at the time.
Yeah.
I think when I was growing up, back to Sandwell those days, it was a tough place. There weren't many of us around. There weren't many of us with the stars on. Most people found it difficult to get jobs. I remember when I did my finance degree, and I had a good degree. I had 16 or 18 interviews within about 3 months, and I flunked all of them. Now, either my face didn't fit, or I was a poor interviewer. I don't know, interviewee rather. We'll never know. But I remember walking the streets. People would be throwing abuse at you, and actually, how you looked, how you dressed, and how you spoke, for many people, were a disadvantage because it was difficult to get jobs. We're going back quite some time now, and so I think a lot of people suffered, including me. I'm not no different. But I think today I would say to people, that difference, the way you dress, the way you look, the way you speak, now actually gives you an advantage. Because when you speak and you say something half decent, because you look different, people will remember you.
Yeah.
Now, I remember when we went with a Janak to, when we were going abroad, we were performing all over the globe. And when we used to walk on stage, we were the different ones from all the reggae bands, from all the rock bands, the punk bands, because we looked different. And that was the first time I said to Vijay, I said, good grief. And the stars are actually an advantage, because we spent all those years, and now is an advantage. And I think as long as you say something decent, that differentiator makes you very powerful. And I also say to people, particularly of a Punjabi or a Muslim or a different culture, we're blessed because actually we understand two cultures. We understand the culture we're born in, which is the indigenous culture, the Anglo-Saxon culture, but we also bring a different angle because of our parents and heritage. So that means we're a bit more empathetic, we have a wider horizon, and we have a different lens we look through. And so these are all the ingredients that will make us innately and potentially very successful.
You must have had a Punjabi MC, the Mundial a moment to know it was a success. And I think probably based on the conversation we had, it was probably when you were waiting for it to be announced on radio, you knew bang. With the awards, and I broke down on stage on my last conference. I actually started crying on stage. I had a back surgery. I donated some stem cell, and I just couldn't control my emotions. It was just, the pressure of building something. Yeah. And that was my 4th year in as well. And you're doing minimum two massive events every year from there. When was that top 5 radio moment for you, when you knew that you were on stage, when those events was a success?
Okay, so we do 5 now. Yeah, so we do we do London.
Yeah, oh yeah, that's what I mean. Like, obviously regionally, I'm just kind of broadening it under an umbrella.
Fine. So for those who know, we do London, we do Birmingham, we do Wolverhampton, we do Leicester, and we do Manchester. So we do 5. We have aspirations potentially going international. I think the first thing, for anything you want to do, you've got to do it the best you can. And if you have that mindset, I will try and be the best I can, then you're on your way, because the mindset you'll set. Secondly, what you do is you look at what's going on and see if you can be different. So in this case and now this is going to be really stereotypical, but I'm going to say, so most Asian events are known for being late, and for being poorly put together. So I immediately said, right, when we remember the release date of the albums had to be on time
and deadline.
Yeah. So I did the same with the events. I said, right, we are going to start at 7:30, whether the room is empty or not, because over time people will know they've got to turn up on time. So that was the first thing, was get the timing right. Secondly, get the quality right. So I wanted to make sure everything we did with the event was high quality, because people notice quality. And thirdly, when I go on stage myself, make sure I'm half decent in what I say. So at least, because when we walk on stage, we represent our community. And if we get that wrong, then everybody will say, well, stereotypical, it's a desi job. What do you expect?
There's one more. One more if I want to add, if I may add.
Yeah.
Good food. Because if all those other things are wrong, everyone remembers they ate well.
And I think, I remember when we first set them up, we would always have Asian cuisine, Punjabi
Mm,
cuisine.
mm.
And I think that's a great place to start. That meant, at least if everything else would, that would work well. And that was absolutely right. Now, when did I know it was becoming successful? I think the best indicator is the amount of tickets we were selling. And because we were now selling out regularly at each event, I knew something was going right. There might not be a eureka moment, but the fact that every time we would put an event on, we would sell out. So we just did Leicester, we sold out. London, we did last year for the first time, we sold out. Birmingham, we sold out. That normally is a good indicator that you're on your way. And I suppose for me, as long as we continue that trend and our events get bigger and higher quality, then you know you're on your way. And I think my final way, I knew we were doing okay, was when we have billionaires happy to speak on our stages.
Mm.
And and I think that's when I knew we were on our way. And of course, during COVID, we spoke about COVID. During COVID, we couldn't do events. But see, I was okay with that because I'd had my digital chaos years ago
Yeah.
when our album sales, CD sales collapsed because the digital downloading. I'd already had my COVID moment back in 2008 when Steve Jobs came with his iPhone. So it didn't phase us that much. And what we did during COVID is we released a new magazine called The Business Influencer.
Yes.
And that is now being sold in America. And we've just taken an order for Canada. And we've got plans to get it in the Middle East, India, and the Far East. So the magazine publishing company is doing quite well as well. But again, same edict, make sure the quality is right, make sure the product is right, and make sure the content is right. So what I've done actually, interestingly, I've done a 360 almost. I started with content. Content happened to be audio. And I've finished with content again, but the content is now written. But to supplement it, to support it, we have a business influencer podcast. So you can now hear the content.
Yep.
Just like you can see the content.
Yeah.
And of course, we're in the content business. If you come to our events, it's also full of content. So if you think about the fundamentals of what I do, it's around content. But it started with music content, and now it's content related to business. So it's the entire back to where I started, really.
That's beautiful, actually. You're the full 360, the circle of life, and exactly what you just kind of just summarized it as well. So, like, I know you're pressed for time, and we've already gone over so already. So, it kind of, what would two questions. One is what the next sort of 6 to 12 months looks like for you. I know you've got a big event coming up in September as well, and give it a plug. Hopefully we meet this week as well. The other thing is I give an opportunity to the guests when they come on here to either jump on a bandwagon or jump off a bandwagon, or if there was anything that they've had something that they wanted to get off their chest. This is the kind of space that I kind of open up that invitation.
Okay, so I think I suppose this is what I do at the moment. So I would encourage people to take risks, calculated. I would encourage people to become entrepreneurs. I have a problem with the education system. We spoke about it at the start. I think the education system doesn't train financial literacy. It doesn't teach personal effectiveness, personal skills. Doesn't teach enterprise and entrepreneurship. That's my problem. So that means we don't have those rounded individuals we spoke about at the start. I would say to people, if there's something you really enjoy, go ahead and do it. Go ahead and set up a business to exploit what you're really good at. Because you know something, later in life, you'll regret it. I had that decision to make. Do I stay in employment and stay as a consultant, or do I make that wacky decision and set up a record company, which is unheard of? But my passion was Bhangra music. My passion was music. So I took that gamble, and thankfully it worked. But it gave me the skill set then to move into other areas, which is events and publishing. And they're the two areas I'm now working on. But I'd say to anybody, we're all, when we were born, we were all, sorry about that, when we were born, we were...
It's another deal.
Yeah. When we were born, we were born with an opportunity to excel. We were born with an opportunity to do the best we can. And I think we were all born with an opportunity to change the world and have an impact. And I think some people, because of circumstances, maybe the mindset's not right, never achieve that potential. And we're all capable of achieving great things. So I think if there's an opportunity that you think you can impact the world, change the world, and have a contribution towards where the world is going, grab it with both hands. Don't be frightened. Just think positive and just go for it. And challenges will come, but if that mindset is right, you'll get to where you need to get to, and you get to where you want to get to. And something, people will be so happy that you've done what you set out to do. And something, you'll sleep well at night.
Thank you for those wise words. I can't emphasize it enough, especially when I've been very fortunate to have a bit of access to yourself and have a discussion over the number of years, in and out, and when it all said and done, just to look at what you've achieved is unbelievable. And I class you as one of my real kind of role models out there, and I really appreciate it.
I think Ricky, one point, and this is probably pointing the finger at you in a good way.
Oh, thank God.
I think, yes, I think there are always going to be opportunities to help others and to help your community. And too often we don't think about things like that. We think about what we're going to get out of it. If you can help, and we've all got a skill set that we can use to other people's benefits. And I think if an opportunity arises where you can help other people and help other people in the community, you leave behind you a real strong legacy of how you've impacted the world. So yeah, it's great having a great career, great having a great business, but people ultimately measure you with your contribution towards making other people's lives better. So I think if there are opportunities to come knocking on your door, reach out, help people, because that, I think, is the biggest thing you can do. And everything else will flow from that. And so yeah, don't let opportunities to help other people pass you by, because that ultimately is how people will measure you. And I know you've done a brilliant job helping other people in communities in all kinds of topic areas and subject areas. And that's why I said I'll point the finger at you, because you're the classic example of someone who put themselves out, not to benefit you, but to benefit people who are in a disadvantaged position, who have had challenges in the past or are having challenges now, and you've set out to help them. And I think that's the true measure of someone's existence on this earth. So I applaud you for that.
I think I might start crying again. I really appreciate those kind words, and it is one of those things where you do something and it's always a cost. Either it's your emotional well-being, your mental, your family time, or anything like this. And I think I've changed a lot over the years, and even now, and I value people in a different way, and I own my mistake. You own, and I think it's a really important bit as you get older, kind of thing, and you see experiences and people. I'm going at an age group where people around me are starting to pass away now. You know what I mean? And that's a real big sort of
scary. Scary as well.
I'll bring it close. Thank you, thank you so much, and I really appreciate this. And thank you once again. Doors always open for the podcast. Anything you ever want to plug or anything like that, it's here for you.
Yeah, well, I was just going to say, if you get a chance, if anybody ever wants to buy a copy of the business influencer publication, drop me a line. You can find me anywhere on Google. And for those from the Wolverhampton area, I'll see you at the Nachural Business Awards on the 8th of July. And if you're down in London somewhere, then I'll see you on the 9th of September at the Hilton Park Lane Mayfair.
I'll put all the links to all those events, everything to you on the description at the end of this on this video. Thanks.
Cheers.
Thanks.